Well, no, that's why I'm like, oh, hey, it's just
I'm
waiting for Adam.
I'm
Maybe we'll
pressing the
start.
button, okay? I'm pressing the button.
Okay, started us off.
Okay, we should be live. Okay,
Hey
you guys.
guys, I'm John. Then we have Adam, as you know, and then today we have a guest. His name's James from Team D Styling, Southern California.
How's it
He
going?
he moved to Hood River last year. Is that correct?
Yes, in
Oh,
May of last year. So made it past the year mark.
nice. Go ahead and tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. Well, again, my name's James. I'm originally from Southern California. I was part of the GGT kind of Super G crew. But GGT was really my home track. Really got me into RC drift. Funny enough, was a friend and I used to drive like the Sprint 2s, the HPIs back in the day. And about 4 years ago, I had one of the Sakura D3 counter steer cars. I was looking for parts. And turned out this place called Super G that was an hour away from my house happened to have a part. And that night just happened to be the night that they were doing their annual twin tandems and normal comp. So I got to go visit and see what see what actual two-wheel drive drifting was. And the next week I bought a chassis and just dove, head first into it. I thought it was the coolest looking, neatest discipline of the RC world. So for the last, few years, I've been trying to build up cars that, drive the way I like and kind of get me to the level of driving I wanted to be at.
Mm-hmm. What was the first chassis then?
First chassis was a Whitey 2S, the plastic one.
Right on.
Yeah. And after kind of becoming acquainted with that, I really wanted to go after, I'm like, yeah, I'm a little hesitant to get into comps because it's definitely intimidating down there for sure. But I thought, how cool would it be if I could actually make it through some of these rounds of a plastic chassis to show that these cars can still perform at a level. And so for about a year and a half, I drove solely a solid, like box stock plastic Whitey 2S. And it was great until I started adding more and realizing it had way more potential than where it was before.
Isn't that funny though? Like just the plastic chassis already, like it. I mean, it's kind of like RDX territory now, right?
It truly is, yeah.
It's just the idea of plastic chassis. They're so much more than what you think.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, James.
Oh no, I was just agreeing.
So because we're talking about plastic chassis, right? So since you were in California, the scene's a lot bigger over there for sure, especially with GGT and Super G being around. Did you have a hard time transitioning from your Sprint 2 to your YD2? How was your driving experience when you were starting out? Like, was it pretty easy? Was it frustrating?
Oh, I'll be honest. It was totally frustrating. Like coming from the 4-wheel drive, you could just power through turns and like the speed. And I think the very, very first time I went to GGT to try it, afterward, like I visited them first and I absolutely hated it. Like my friend and I were like, what is all this gyro steering shenanigans? I just want to, we were so used to the 4-wheel drive stuff. And
you were one of those guys.
I absolutely despised it when I first tried it.
Gyros are evil.
Yeah. I cannot figure it out the very first time I tried it. But then it's one of those things I'm like, all right, let me give it a chance and stick with it. And I don't know, you kind of get the hang of it, figure out what's actually trying to happen on the car and try not to fight all of it. And then it starts to work. So yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it or touched any of my old HPI stuff. No, I think I might have even got rid of it. But yeah, trying to think of what else. So what else, John? It's like
so during like your introduction and things like that, I'll ask a bunch of questions like, what's your name, where you from? But I kind of did that for you. And then you mentioned that you're part of the GGT and Super G crew out in SoCal. What I normally would ask is like, what do you do? Like, what's your like daily job? Like, what you do during the day?
Oh,
other than
sure.
drifting?
Oh,
You don't have
so
to be super specific, but like the general.
yeah, totally.
Uh-huh.
So to, so professionally, I'm a product craft designer for a brand called Slingshot Sports. They create wakeboarding, kiteboarding, and hydrofoiling equipment. Uh, I've always been a huge action sports person, so it kind of was fitting for me. So I get to design all of the colorways for and graphics for each product for the year. So currently, I'm working on 2025 products and trying to get those sampled and work through to make sure we like what they are and they meet the budget and price that we're looking for. Adam has the formula up on the screen. That's a fully carbon
Oh, hold on.
kiteboard.
Let me get it.
Maybe not.
Let
Maybe
me.
not.
Oh, so guys, by the way, this is not an invite for you guys to hit up James for discounts. This is just we want to get to know all the drivers that we talk to. Um, so on my next question, since you
Mhm.
answered that one, how how did you get into, other than playing with the Sprint 2, how did you get into RC, like in general? Like,
Sure. So I actually was exposed to I got into flying when I was about 7 years old. I did a lot of like park electric flying. So back in the good old GWS days with the old Tiger Moth and like the slow stick, that's kind of what got me
yes.
into it. And then when I was about 12, 13, I started flying nitro aircrafts, anywhere from 46 size to 60 size gas planes.
Oh wow.
I started doing amateur competitions in pattern and acrobatic flying. So when I was younger, I was fully into flying. I thought that was the coolest thing. And then a couple of friends all had either Traxxas Rustlers or stuff like that, and they showed me the whole bashing realm, and I thought, this is pretty cool too. I want to get into that. And then got into that for a bit to find out that I also had an off-road track within a half hour of me. So went from a basher into doing two-wheel drive stadium track racing at a local track called SoCal Raceway. They're long gone now. They have a successor now, but that was like a full blue groove dirt track, and that was kind of a really cool way of, I got into bashing because the fun aspect of driving RC, but doing the whole track thing was like, oh, I have to really refine my motor skills of like how to work on my car and really kind of learn how to tune it. And then I kind of shifted focus again. And before getting into drift, I flew RC helicopters that were about 500 to 600 size that scare the absolute hell out of me now that I think about it.
I've been there.
It's super cool until I realized how terrifying it really was. And then so now I mostly drift, but I do have a few park flyers, and I really got into slope flying or dynamic soaring a while back as well. So I have a few of those that come out maybe once a year if they're lucky. So I think with the RC world, I tried dabbling in as many different disciplines to really see what really stuck. But I feel like drift is the one where, it really lined up with what I love and kind of all the aspects of, the RC community.
Okay,
Sure.
cool.
Now, really quickly, because all of the flight experience, right? And you said that you had competed in aerial, right?
Yeah, I bet.
Now we know his secret, you guys. You just need to go fly and compete in the flying part, because I'm betting you anything that's more nerve-wracking than drifting is.
I mean, with the plane, you can put it into the ground and it ends real quick. So you have that.
Or you can hit someone like
or a
in
person.
the park, yeah.
Dude, yeah, some of the nightmare stories that come out of helicopters, man, even quadcopters, just like people that don't take off their rotors when they turn them on and just like scrape up their face or their arms. It's gnarly stuff.
Yeah, I only quit flying helicopters when I had a fellow flyer or friend with me started telling me about stories about like people he knew on the East Coast that have had the stories that we never want to have happen to us, and it was enough to be like, you know what, I might step away from this while I'm safe and I have, everything still attached to me.
Mhm. Well, going back to that technology, right? Like when you were flying, when I was flying helicopters, there was no flybarless, right? Like they all had flybars. The gyro wasn't as good yet. Now it's like you have flybarless, and then the gyros are really good to where they're to the point where we don't really have to. Well, like for me, speaking from experience, as far as like I think the last flybarless helicopter I flew was the Blade 400, the flybarless version. And that thing, like if you'll hover on its own pretty much. There's no like there's no like um altitude hold or anything like that, or GPS like the drones that we have now. But yeah, like I was actually able to fly that like a couple packs before I called it quits and sold it. Um and then the drones, we have altitude hold,
Yeah.
like GPS lock, so it stays in one place and you can do whatever you want around it. So, but
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a weird, like we're now like drifting. The gyros are better and work harder, or drive pretty well now, or help us drive to make it look like we know what we're doing.
Totally.
So,
And going back to the helicopters real quick, it's like back in the day, it's like you go out with your screwdriver, land it, hopefully, try and hit your kill switch on the remote, and then dial down the gyro physically and be like, okay, I hope that's the right gain. And you try and fly it again. You're like, oh, that's too much. Bring it back down. And
mhm,
oh my God, nowadays with all the assists and stuff, it's like, wow, that's so much easier. It feels so much
Mhm.
safer than it used to be.
right? So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've had a guest. So I've lost some of my notes on what I normally ask. But Adam, do you have anything to ask James at the moment?
I mean, if John would just pull up the Google Doc, you would know. Because that part of the thing hasn't changed since day one.
Well, so
Future
I guess
chassis?
we'll jump right
Future
into
chassis.
it.
Okay.
Yep. We'll bring out your chassis and we'll talk about it.
All right. I don't know. We'll see what. Here we are. So, like the rest of the crew, I'm driving a RDX.
Rest of the crew, he says.
The rest of the people who have them. This one, for a lot of you who met me at the track, it's a relatively stock build. The only changes that quite a few knew is I did change out the oil that originally came in it. Instead of using the 50 weight that was included, I ran 100 weight for the last 3 years due to D-Style and just what worked for GGT, and I wanted to have that consistency on this car as well. And then I did bore out the pistons to 8-hole instead of the factory 4-hole. So I just wanted extra movement. I really like how the car moves through its suspension that way. But other than that, it's pretty much a bone stock RDX.
Do you want to go ahead and talk about your electronics that you have on there?
Sure. So call me old school or not, I'm still running it's so hard to see at the camera. I'm running a DX1 10.5 motor. And that is paired with the RPX V2 Yokomo ESC. And I've got a little Wi-Fi module hiding on there. Work on tunes, or if anyone else wants to share a tune. Running the V4 gyro. I was on a V3, but D-Style member noticed I was running V3 and would not allow that, so he sold me his V4. And then after Miko just claiming how amazing this Rev D servo is, I had to hop on board with it. And these two, I don't know, they work quite well together. I'm very happy with them. As for battery packs, I'm running the Genzace 3500 milliamp. So they're the thin, small, lightweight ones. And that's just something I've always been accustomed and comfortable with driving, is the smaller LiPo packs.
I mean, that's a real thing. Like all new chassis today. What are you doing, John?
I'm sending Miko a picture.
Oh, geez.
This guy.
All new chassis today, like it's like skinny battery or bust. Like anything over 18.5 millimeters without spacers, it's like no go. Like
yeah.
So that's just one of those things.
It, God, I've driven a few cars with. I knew someone at GG2 who ran 5,000 milliamp, and the thing was an absolute monster. And it was crazy on how much of a difference the car drove with that battery. He had it fully rear mounted in his, I believe it was like a SX Tube back then, and oh my gosh, the amount of weight that was over the rear wheels was insane.
Are we talking about Nick? No.
Yeah, we are talking about Nick. Funny enough. And as for the most fun part of the electronics, I'm running a Futaba 7PX with a pretty fun wrap.
Okay, so new person, new perspective. If you were to say to a new driver and like they're all in, right? They're going to be into drift. What is your recommendation on a radio?
If they're really, dedicated and they want to go, stay with it and be good on it, it's got to be either a 4PV or a 7PX.
4PV.
There's a few people at GT2 that run them, and they're absolutely stoked on them. They love them. To me, it's kind of like the little brother of the 7PX. I mean,
Miko's on.
I see it on here. Too funny. Yeah, I mean, Miko's the one that really helped me transition back to Futaba. I originally started off with a 3PV, and that didn't fly for very long. And then one of our teammates, I was able to get his M12. So it went from Futaba over to Sanwa. And I kind of missed just the user friendliness and, menus that the Futabas had. And then when the opportunity, when Miko helped out and showed, helped me out with the 7PX, I knew there was no going back after that. And I knew that was going to be probably my new favorite radio.
Mm-hmm. So into the Futaba world, basically.
I think so. There's just the amount of fine-tune adjustment and ability, and the ease of use with the menus. I feel like it's so much more, user-friendly than some of the Sanwas. Like I've dabbled around with a few like MT44s or M17s and stuff, and they're great remotes. It's just the way they built the Futaba is so much, I don't know, as a design, from a design perspective, it's just so much more intuitive to use. And
100%.
I'm already confused enough.
No, 100%. Like literally 7PX, 10PX is having a smartphone on your radio. Having a Sanwa radio today is still like trying to figure out like where all the hidden features are. Like you have to scroll through it. You have to know it. And there's always a learning curve to everything, but man, oh man, just being able to poke at something, like point and tap, it's so much better.
Oh, 100%. Like it took me probably 6 months to figure out how to set a certain endpoint on the M12, because I know, I got it as a used radio. I never really dove into the manual on it. It's more of like fumbling around of how do I get it to work, and asking my old teammate, I'm like, how do I do this with it? Can you show me? So yeah, being in the dark on that, and then having something that is so easily navigable and understandable, I'm like, this thing is amazing.
Well, so much is hidden on it too, because like anything Acuvance Futaba related, it's all just like nonsense, or it's all hidden. So like that's why you only saw a recent video of Roland Garage and their Acuvance setup, which I still think John and I did ours first. Well, no, I know we did ours first.
we did ours first for sure. And like what we talked about last time, we do another one for the locals, and we'll add it on here on our stream. Well, I was gonna ask you for your setup, but you told us what it is. And you didn't change any camber or toe out, toe in on the RDX, right?
So either call me lazy or call me, really just putting all my faith in Rev D, but I really wanted to run their stock free, like, the fixed length arms and camber. I'm like, I want to see how dialed they have it in from the factory before I have to touch it and make adjustments. So yeah, I don't have any, it's non-adjustable factory stuff.
Right on. And actually, let's hop into this right now, since both of you guys have RDXs. because it's kind of like the dumb proof car, right? You just put it together.
Pretty much.
And yes, there are things that you can change, like drilling pistons and setting up shocks in terms of like
Mhm.
preload, right? So what all can you actually change on the RDX, like in terms of what John has done versus what you've done, James?
Go ahead, James.
I was gonna say, with mine, I don't know. I feel like the odd one out at the track because I'm the only one really running the low mount motor. Everyone's running the high mount, and that's just something that carried over from my MC1 days of how I like the feel of that. So that kind of does, give it a little bit of different personality. I know, John, you're running the fully adjustable turnbuckles, front and rear, I believe. No, you're
Nope.
not. I thought. Okay.
So like with my RDX, I'm completely stock other than the front shock tower spacer. I am running a CLSD, and then I am running a 1 mil Pro Squat in the rear, high motor. Yeah, other than that, the car's still completely stock. Basically, I bought the car for the idea of like having a car that I don't have to change camber, caster whenever I'm driving it. It was literally the only thing that I changed out of that car before I bought or after I bought it was my electronics. Basically, I took all of Jake's old electronics that was on there, and I put my own and kind of tuned it the way I wanted it to feel. And it's been great. Like last comp, I should have comped with that car, to be honest. But yeah, the only other things that I plan on changing with the car is the servo relocator kit. I want to try that out and see how it will change the driving dynamic of it by moving the servo backwards. So things you can change, I guess, from like RevD's option parts is the spacers for the front shock tower, the servo relocation kit. You can change the hexes front and rear. They offer a 5 mil and a 7 mil. And then what else? Crap, I'm blanking out. Oh, there's a couple wrap up kits that you can get, like the shocks, the new shock tower extender, so you can move the shocks out more. Yeah, I think that's all. The new composite chassis from RevD,
Mm-hmm.
the FPF or something like that, or RPF.
FRP, I think.
FRP. Yep. Sorry, I don't have that cheat sheet in front of me right now.
Neither do
But
I.
yeah, so things that I want to try, but I want to leave it as close to what it is now. I don't think I want to change it too much. So
Sure. I think what's kind of fun too with these cars is, the different approaches we have for the rear differential. Either,
Mhm.
I was running it originally with you guys in the beginning with the spool. And after visiting, GGT down south, I was advised to run the gear diff from the SX. Exactly. And to run 5,000 weight oil in it. And funny enough, that's actually, brought a pretty interesting dynamic change to it. It feels like it has a little bit more grip and power through turns and doesn't feel like it spins out as easy. I know a few people are running that limited slip. I think you're saying that. I'm still waiting for a really beautiful carbon chassis to come out eventually, something that, is visually pleasing, but also hopefully performance oriented. I would like to try I've seen the shock tower extender, that little spacer. I would like to eventually put that on and see how that helps perform it. But I don't know, I think a fun take with these cars is since they drive, I feel like you can change things around, but they're still like that same bone, like the skeleton on it still has the same feel, even if you change a bunch on it. So it kind of almost turns into like, how are you running, what are your ESC and motor set? Because I feel like that also dictates a lot of the personality of these cars.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so like the idea, I remember, like I was talking about why I bought it to begin with, is to have that one car that just drives. Like I want to be able to just go to GGT or Super G or Rolling Garage and be like, same car, just drive. And then you just kind of figure it out by how you like driver mod, right? Like how you drive on a different courses, different track, different surfaces with the same car without changing a whole lot. Like other than spec tire, like say if I went to Super G and they're like, oh, LF5s
Mhm.
is spec tire, then oh, okay, so same setup. Now I just gotta learn how to drive with LF5s. That's kind of like my idea with the RDX. Of course, yeah, I made some changes to make it drive to where I like it, but I think that's what the RDX is for me. Like the way it sits right now and the way it drives. Sure, it's a car that I should and will always just be like, okay, that's a comp car, and then I want to have my fun car like the RX-7 or the Shark Deck with the Yokomo parts on it.
Not a shark.
I said Shark Deck,
I know. I know.
so
No, but seriously
that's
though,
what-
like I think you're right, because people have literally talked about having like an RDX only competition. And it's really intriguing, like a complete stock class where literally all the chassis are the same. We were talking about that with the RDS as well. So
like everybody gets a RDS and make a comp out of it, just because.
I mean, what, dollar for dollar, the RDX is only what, like $20 more expensive, something like that.
Yeah, but at that point, like from so far from what I've seen, I know we discussed this last time, but for me, it's RDX over RDS for sure.
100%.
The plastic quality and suspension and things like that. The RDX is definitely built more. Rev D sponsor discount.
Fuck.
Wow.
I mean, with all seriousness, though, recently, I've always wanted one, so I bought one of those Yusukani DT3 trike drift trikes, right? So I'm very surprised it drifted well. It's not as good as the RDX, but it drifted well. I was able to tandem with a couple people at the track, but you'll notice definitely like the quality of the composite that they use or the plastic is definitely not as good as the RDX or the Yokomo or even the MST. I would say the MST has a better quality. But yeah, I think that's why RDX would be the top for me at the moment. And then of course conversion for conversions.
I mean, literally, the RDX has become like kind of the golden standard in terms of ready to go chassis. There's nothing else that can really touch it in terms of literally the only thing that makes it like something that's off-putting is if it doesn't match your style. Like
Yes.
that's about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one.
Mhm.
So I had, when I first came to visit you two, I had my MC1
hmm
and I drove that with you two. And then, being here in Hood River, I'm like, I don't know how often, for me, it's about almost 3 hour drive from here down to Albany.
hmm
And, started wondering like, is this chassis is almost overkill for me not to be driving it, if I was looking maybe two or three times a year. And so the thought was like, what if I switch to an RDX, go back to my roots of a plastic chassis and kind of, see where Rev D landed with creating this chassis. And now that I have it, it's incredible. And how I spent probably a year and a half trying to get that MC1 dialed the way that I really wanted it. And it's crazy how the RDX was already 90% there.
Right?
Yeah, it's like, wow, it's already saved me so much time from where I was before of like, oh, I know the style, I know how it drives. Cool. I can't wait so now it was supposed to be more of a daily driver to go just have fun with you guys over at PDX or down in Albany. But now it's like, oh, this thing is actually incredibly capable. I truly wasn't expecting that. And now that it is, it's like, I'm actually stoked that this is now it's the only chassis I own. So it's both my comp car and daily driver.
I think it's funny because like more and more people are switching to RDX and completely, absolutely frustrated with their other cars now, just because it drives so well out of the box. It like
Mhm.
Sam was telling me about it the other day or the other week, and it's just like, man, dang.
And I remember I sold my MC1, my all purple MC1 to get an RDX. So it's paying off.
Well, I guess the real question for you guys, well, I guess not for John because John's never going to change anything, but James, like, are you ever planning on changing over to full turnbuckle kit,
Um,
like arms,
that's a great
turnbuckles?
question. Yeah, I mean, it sounds terrible. Like, I'm so happy with the way it drives now and its behavior. I mean, it has a bit of understeer. Maybe I could rechange the Ackerman or the camber on it just to help get it to drive a little bit differently. But it's almost like that debate of like, do I really want to go through all this tuning to get it to drive just a tiny bit better than where it's at, or is it at that point where it's like it's good enough and I can just kind of compensate for it? So I might leave it alone for the time being.
So, but do you think that mentality could technically hurt you? And like, if you were going serious and back into the competition circuit, right? Like, do you think that mentality would hurt you when everybody like around you evolves? Like, or do you just follow the trend of like what everyone is doing, or follow like the Takahiro blog?
I mean, I kind of lived and breathed the Miko train for for quite a while. And as whatever he felt was working great on his car, we tried on my car, and I was pretty much a solid believer on it, and it always worked for me. So I do kind of tune into what he thinks is, a feature that would really benefit my style and what is kind of current as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of dictated off that. I mean, times are a little different now that I'm 1,000 miles away from there. But it can also depend on where we're competing or what the surface is too. I mean, the only two surfaces is PDX and then that the car show that we went to with that super grippy polished concrete. Like, the car was able to perform just fine on those two surfaces. But what if I visit somewhere? If I'm going on a trip to Japan and I'm going on that ultra slick e-tile, is that setup that I have now going to work? I don't know. And if it doesn't, then I would fall into looking into like, all right, where do I need to, looking into adjustable front end on it.
I mean, technically, you just need to go down to Super G now.
That's true.
Because they got the same stuff as Vega, right? And Vega is supposedly like the slickest track that you can that's there, or at least yeah.
So I don't think getting stuck into like, oh, I don't want to change anything will happen to any of us. Like any veterans that's been drifting for a while, we've evolved from sprint 2s and DPs, and a lot of those tuning have transformed or evolved to what we're driving now. I mean, I built a chassis out of spare parts and just playing with the idea of, okay, this is how I want my suspension to feel, and this is how I want to run my camber. This is how I want it to look. Like, I think the performance on like, or our adaptiveness to the surface or the driving style can just happen pretty easy. Like, I built that car and then drove it, and I was like, oh, it drives well. And I've never driven it anywhere else. Like, I mean, I did figure eights in the garage just to see if it will drift. And of course I go to PDX and I was like, oh, I can hang.
Mm. Well, so, I guess you can only driver mod something so much, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that you can eat. Like, I'm not gonna say that I can take, horribly built car with the most horrible electronics and win a comp. I'm just saying that, like, with what we know, we can adapt to make things better, so we can drive at a certain place and environment.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Cameron, thoughts on an RDX Mini? We've already talked about it, to be honest. Honestly, it kind of depends on whether or not how far we want to go deep down in the mini roll. Like developing the chassis is not hard because it's the same as an MC1 on the rear end, which means that it's the same as it's the same as an MC1. But we already have the rear end sorted out. It would just be the front end, and that's the real question. So could it happen? Yes. Should it happen? Probably not, because we all went pretty hard on the minis, and then everyone's selling them now.
Well, I think people are selling it because they want an RDX.
Yeah, like honestly, that's kind of true. I wouldn't put it past that.
Mhm.
But yeah, like, could it happen? For sure. Should we do it first? Yeah. That way we can be first and not other people.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be down for that idea. I do want to make it short though this time, to where we can actually make it super short.
Well, I think adjustable
Like-
chassis, like, if we would have, well, yeah, if we would have went adjustable with our original one, then either way, I don't know. There's pluses and minuses about like the adjustable deck. Like the Shark is cool, but why?
Yeah, it worked for me. I mean, I'm working on that K truck, and I just slammed it as small as it get, and I got close, but we have something else in the works, which that will be part of a different show and tell.
James, do we need to get you a
Yes.
mini as well?
I've been wanting to get into it. I remember, I think, John, did you send a chassis down to Miko a while back? Or
Yeah,
Adam?
Miko actually reached out to me, and he wanted one, so we sent him one. Or
Okay.
guys, we didn't give him one; he bought it. So
Nice of them. Yeah, because I remember him putting that together, and the minis did take off for quite a while at GGT, and it was just super funny because you have your standard size drift car, and then the minis, and just tandeming with a mini was like this whole new experience of just hilariousness, but also like such a cool, weird, event. I did want to pick up one then, and then. Kind of slowly after that, is it the WPL, the 12, the little K truck,
Yep.
like that came on the scene hot, and then people were 3D printing parts and trying to get the most steering angle you can. I kind of want to go down that route of doing a conversion on one of those trucks and actually 3D print out the parts and make it work. The minis are cool.
If you do. We'll talk about it offline. I got you.
You got me. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I
So-
mean, no. You guys can talk about that.
Okay. That's for next episode.
But hey, let's switch things up for a little bit here. Let's go ahead and talk about calendar events. Just kind of moving things along. So calendar events, Tandem Tuesdays are still a thing. It sounds like they're having a small turnout, but consistent turnout for like whoever's going, which is good, which is really, really good, because whatever practice for tandeming that they can fit in without anyone getting like butt hurt, then so be it. Did you hear about that, James?
No, I don't know the full story behind that one.
So literally, there's an announcement of like tandem battles, right? And someone shows up and is like, "Oh, I didn't know there was an event," and kind of gets their feelings hurt a little bit.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about now. So yeah, before things were popping off it was popping off and everybody's showing up right on a Friday night. We kind of did like an impromptu, hey, let's do a tandem battle. It literally lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes at the most. And it wasn't even like you can't participate because you're new. It's like everybody, if you want to try it, come on and tandem. There's a couple of guys that got really butthurt about it and talk crap. I drove half an hour to go do this and there was an event. It would have been nice if someone told us there was going to be an event. It was on a flyer that I made for that Friday night. It said tandem randomly at a certain time. But yeah, I know a lot of us, like including me, like if I go to a track, I want to be able to either just do an open track and drive and not like tandem. But then of course, like when you're open track for like 6 hours, I want to break that up a little bit and maybe like do a couple battles or just kind of like a follow the leader type.
Yeah, you can only make buddies so many times.
But it's one of those. It's like it's they just got butt hurt. But yeah. So
that's all.
Tandem Tuesday is still a thing. It's a weekly mini event. There are free hot dogs for PDX that they announced or Kevin's announcing, just to kind of give back to the community that supports him. So that's.
Now, I will say someone needs to go and take Andy's winning champion, like, because Andy's winning. Someone needs to go knock him down.
Tuesday's really hard to like make it over there though, because it's like first day back to work for me. And James, it's during the week, so I'm sure he works the next day.
Yeah. Well, tricky to make it out during the week.
It just has to be someone is all. Like,
right?
He can't keep on winning, or else he's just gonna stay at the top and be cool.
Yeah, but
like
that's why we have comps, like actual comps.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things. PDX is doing good things, helping us out, have a spot to drift and actually indoors. There are big plans, so hopefully it keeps going. And if any of you guys want to come visit and tandem with James, Adam, or I, we will be there. Normally Friday nights. So we'll try and do some Sunday stuff. This summer is going to be, we're thinking it's going to be epic because we want to do some events involving real cars. So, and we can do another comp eventually. So,
yeah, I want to do final bout for RC.
Final bout style.
Like the actual event. Yeah, like, but the full thing, not just like team tandems, but including the car show. And the representative part.
We didn't have a car show. It was just kind of like a silent car show because the judges could just kind of pick out the winners. But yeah, I agree.
No one knew about it.
Well, yeah, we didn't want to we wanted people to just bring what they have, and then we picked out the best ones. So
okay.
Cameron, just make show up more.
Right. And that's what I was gonna say. You can see John and James up there. For me, it might be every so often. Who knows? I have a drivable car, so that's the important thing. Now I know I can get up there. But moving on, the June 24th and 25th is the RC Hoarders RC Swap Meet in Happy Valley. That is the what's it called? Hobbytown? Yeah, Hobbytown. Yep. $15 per day for a table, or $25 for both days. Call ahead to them to reserve a table. New Northwest Hobby Hours. They are closed on Mondays and Tuesdays now. I've been in there on a Monday, and it is absolutely ghost town in there. So yeah. Wednesday is 11 to 6. Thursdays through Saturday is 11 to 7. Sunday is 11 to 6. So yeah.
One thing I want to add to this calendar event, guys, if you need anything RC, support your local businesses that support us. Hobbytown's been trying to carry parts for drifters. Anytime that I ask for parts that needs to be on a shelf, Kenny pretty much orders it right then on the spot. Obviously we have PDX RC Underground that supports us with the track. Northwest Hobbies, they were out there for us before PDX RC Underground. And that's Adam's home track. So support them as well. They do try to carry as much as they can get. So let's show them a little support so they keep supporting us.
If it looks like I'm playing randomly on the screen, it's because I'm moving things around. So don't worry about it too much.
And yeah, we are paying attention when you guys are talking, and between me and Adam, we are checking the chats. So sometimes it looks like I'm looking away. It's because I'm trying to read the chat.
Yep. Right now,
do we want to skip a few things and do roast my rig, or we have one?
Yeah, we have a lot of things going on in Roast My Rig. So
Hey,
let me
do
go
you
ahead
wanna go
and
through that?
let me bring it up on the screen here so we can
Oh,
roast
there we go.
people's
So we can
rigs.
all see it.
Awesome.
James, get ready.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll be kind.
let's go ahead and roast this rig. It's another Jake RDX. Honestly, there's nothing to roast. It's an RDX. Although, hey, James, have you driven the Revox the Revox gyro yet?
I have driven it. Yes. Miko has it on his current RDX right now, and it felt great. I actually really, really liked it. It's more of, do I want to part with my V4 at the moment? Maybe. I can't remember if it was driving on setting 5 or 6, but I think it felt absolutely dialed. So yeah,
that's funny that you say that you were on 5 or 6. Like, I had it all the way down to 1, and it still wasn't reacting enough for me, or it wasn't. I couldn't put in enough input of my input for the gyro. Like, it wasn't reactive enough for me. And that's just because of how I didn't want to change my chassis, which we're actually going to talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, Revox is cool because it's really easy, right? You just literally press 2 buttons up or one button press down, and you pretty much got it.
Yeah, just the simplicity on it is just it looks great. It's definitely probably the next step for electronic I'm going to get into.
They're expensive though. Is the thing. They're like $120.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only downside that I see.
I do want a shot. Like, I want to buy. I think I'm gonna try it. One of these days, I'm gonna buy brand new, so no one else has played with it, and then I'll play with it to see if I can get it to, or if I could get myself to like it.
But
Because everybody seems to be liking it, right? Like, everybody's like, "Oh man, I'm ditching my GYD 550 for the Revox," and I'm like, I had one. I got to drive Jake's Revox with the Rev D servo, and it drove. I mean, don't get me wrong, it drove and it drove well. I just didn't feel like I liked it. Like, you know how you have that one feel and you're just like, okay, you're stuck on it.
right.
Yeah, kind of like how my new to me chassis that I built. It got built because I was chasing this feeling of driving a different car, and I wanted to get to that level, and I got there with my own, like, with my own tune. Like, it's not like a complete copy of someone's tune, but it was like the feeling is there. So
I mean, I think the overall reason why people are leaving the 550 is just simplicity's sake. It's way more easier to slap in a V4 or a Revox or even a 302 for that matter, and just drive and then tune the chassis to the gyro.
I mean, that's true.
And actually, James, have you been on the 550 bandwagon yet?
I've driven the 550 because that was the step between a few people's V4s and the Revox. They were on the 550 for a while, and it is insane. Like, the amount of tuning or just the feel. I can't remember exactly what setting it was, but it's like it kept throwing me off because every time I drove it, it was like you almost to drive it through the turn. Let's say you're drift, you're in a turn going left. You end up actually turning your wheel into the turn left to help with the drive. I don't know what setting it was, but it was like this bizarre thing that actually when you got used to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. Like, it took my brain couldn't figure it out for the first 10 minutes, but once I got it, I'm like, wow, this is insanely stable and kind of cool.
It's called the CarX setting.
Like
100%. Like, if you drive, like, because on CarX I use my 7PX to control in CarX, and that's what it is you turn more into the corner to be able to get it to be more angle. So AVCS mode, man. Although I've never had my car actually do that. Like, I still had to counter steer a little bit as far as AVCS mode goes. So something's probably wrong that I'm doing there.
Just the amount of time that went into getting the ones I've driven were, the many hours and many, fine tuning to get it to drive the way it did. And I would have never figured that out on my own, or, I don't want to sound like I'm lazy with tuning, but, if I can get it to be pretty similar, right, where, from the beginning, it's like, I'd prefer to have that be like my starting point than trying to figure it all out of my
I mean, RDX is literally a testament to that. Like, you build it and you drive it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, roast my rig. We've got Jake's Travis here. LC, it's the second version of it. What are your guys' thoughts on the whole weight shift kind of fad going on right now? Is it the next thing that's going to happen? Or is it just kind of like its own thing, its own beast?
Well, so like for me, I think it's always been there. I mean, we had people were doing that on the YD2 when it first came out, like the high motor mount. Some people are mounting the battery on the very back behind the axle or on top of the ESC motor, and all the ESC is on the bottom. I think people have done that to gain traction, depending on where they're driving, right? I remember seeing people, well, I mean, the D-like we are.
Right.
That's what, of course, the weight shift. I think there's a time and place for it. I would, like, again, it's another toy, it's another experience, right? I wanna play with it and tune it to see if I can make it better, or if it's like, oh, I just gotta switch my driving to more Sendic type, or drive it more mellow.
Right, but
so, James, what do you think?
So I always thought they were interesting. Like, I don't know, watching quite a few videos from Japan, it's like I felt like I saw a lot of that high mount battery pack style, and I'm like, when it drives, it's cool because the car really leans over into turns, and it's like, wow, that actually looks like it's got a lot of side bite and grip. But like, for some reason, my brain never thought they were that quick, or I don't know. I always had like a certain feeling towards them. And then recently enough, when I was down in California at my home track, I got to drive. One of the guys who goes there is Vittorio. Yes. He's got a high mount set up, and he let me drive it, or the high CG, and oh my gosh, that car was fast. I was not, I always thought it was more of like a stylish, more of aesthetic kind of look for driving. I didn't, think it was a true performing machine, but after driving it, I was solidly impressed that it could keep up with anything and anyone and still, have that unique characteristic.
Now, I was watching the videos of his Yokomo. It's an SD1 LTS, right? That's what it is, right? So his high mount is not just high mount; it's like 4 centimeters above where like his high mount, the normal high mount is. So like the way that I think he said it is that his battery's literally at the top of his body.
That makes total sense.
Like it's just chilling there. But yeah. Like I guess what I meant by my question is the fact that we're seeing it as like a built-in mechanic instead of like your homebrew situation. Like more so that we're seeing it commercially now, ready to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a fad. It could be something that's, I mean, you need to try new toys, right? Like it can't just be like the RDX forever. There's going to be, like we were on the YD2s, and then it became the YD2S, and then the YD2SX, and then SX3, and then there's like different changes and knuckles and things like that. I think it's nice that when you say you want an LTS chassis, it's kind of like on the quality of how the D-like ReAR was, aluminum parts, knuckles, this and that. You just throw it together and it's ready to go. Instead of like, oh, let me buy a battery mount that goes on top, so you can do a LTS kit. You have the knuckles that is similar to what the D-like is. I think I wouldn't mind trying it. Like I said, I wanted another shot on a D-like chassis just to tune it for experience. So
Now,
It's not a bad thing, I don't think.
no, not at all. So interesting thing about this body, or the way that Jake has this set up is that the battery's literally right over the rear shock tower. What body do you have on that, Jake? Oh, if he's still listening. But there are probably not very many bodies that actually fit that. Maybe we need
I
to.
like how clean the wiring is on that car, by the way. Like it doesn't look like he just kind of put it together. It's pretty clean, pretty unique looking.
Yeah.
So, um, I'll roast it for the non-matching upper arms.
That's what we're doing. Okay, bringing it back, you
we're
guys.
supposed to be roasting this card, right?
I mean, you've seen yeah. Anyway.
Okay, no on the chassis.
Oh,
Like-
come on!
No,
Nostalgia factor, man.
not a fan of like the flame. You know me though. Like I will take a plastic square or rectangular chassis over that.
Okay, so James, do you know what this is?
It's a Sakura, right?
It's
yeah,
a
like that
Sakura.
looks just like that's
Ugh.
the modded version of what I had. I'm like, wait a minute, motor in the front with the blade.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is the Sakura, or the 3 Racing Sakura D3. This is
Mhm.
like counter steer days, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, not even.
Yeah.
Wait, whose chassis is that?
Hold on. It is Aza's.
Nice.
But yeah, so this is like the full carbon version of it back when SSG was like a super popular thing, right? Yokomo did it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep, the
they all did
SSG chassis.
Let's see. So this pretty much started my counter steer days. Not like this, the plastic version. Chuck Brewster was the one that like brought me into the D3, or yeah, the D3 racing or chassis, whatever it is. I had one that literally looked exactly like this, except I still had the plastic motor bulkhead up front. And then I got an FXX, MST FXX, and did that. Thought I did everything wrong because I didn't know how to do our rear-wheel drive RC, because it was the first like actual chassis that was mainstream produced for rear-wheel drive. And then I literally thought, hey, I'm gonna take the axles out of this car and just see how it does, because we were getting enough angle to like make it work, and we were on carpet, so it did really well. And then I flipped the entire chassis. So I did I put this whole rear front bulkhead on the rear, so it was my first rear motor chassis. And yeah, a lot of things happened with this chassis. A lot of firsts on this chassis too. Yeah, that's also when we were running skinny. Like, remember the skinny wheels? That generation.
I never had a chance to play with those.
Oh, okay. So typical wheel width is like 26, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were running like half of that, just because we thought we needed the clearance to be able to get the angle and to be able to get the scrub that we needed, but now we're nowhere close to that. This is one of Lance's chassis. It's the TT02. I think it's a TT02.
Looks like a TT01. TT02 maybe. Lance is on there listening to us. Then like look how far we've come on the electronics and the wiring and pretty much everything else. It's still cool to me to see chassis that are older, just to be like, oh, like if the DP was back up and running, could you imagine what we could do with that?
It's still running, John.
Oh, there's just, do you have electronics in it? You're
Yeah.
bringing it next day?
It's the high mount monstrosity thing. Oh, okay. Let me rephrase it. The only parts of a DP that are left in that are the plastic bevel gears in the diff.
Mm.
Everything else is different. Um, let's see, James, were you were around for the the Yokomo Drift Package days? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. I remember this. Yep. It's almost like it felt like a commonality between like the Tamiya TT01 and then like the HPI E10, which
Yep.
kind of like that tub style as well.
And the team associated TC4.
Yeah, TC4,
TC3,
yeah,
TC4. Both of them have the same style. Yeah.
For fun, I sent John a picture of my old Sakura D3 next to an old E10 that I had as a little bit of a legacy piece.
Oh, you had a D3.
I did have a D3, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So John's the odd one out here.
But I think I had a D3. I think because I remember trying to get back into drifting. I didn't have a chassis or money to buy one, and one of the guys had a chassis before going back to counter steer and whatnot. I got handed one of those, if I'm not mistaken, all plastic. Hated it. I mean, I got it to drive, but it's not as good. And then immediately got suckered into drifting again. So I bought another DP and converted that to rear-wheel drive with the big angle kit that you can buy. So yeah, because I did counter steer, and then I went up to a track up north, and it's like, oh, rear-wheel drive is the thing. Let's try this. I actually tried rear-wheel drive with no gyro, and I tried using a helicopter gyro.
Mm-hmm.
It drifted. Yeah. It drifted, but it's not. Yeah, Jesus. I now that I remember that, it's like, damn. But yeah, it was an interesting experience for sure. And then of course, D-like gyro happened, and then blah blah blah, and so on.
Right. Ooh. So take a look at this. Do you know what it is just from looking at it?
Yep. It's MRX or RMX GT.
Mm-mm. You're right the first time.
Oh, MRX GT.
I believe so.
Oh, it's Gods.
Yep. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was.
I remember that garage floor looking mat that he's using. It's from a Axial RC rock crawler box.
Let's see what else can we spot here. We've got a Ultimate Instinct Goku here. No, that's not Ultimate Instinct. What is that? It's silver hair. Anyway.
Oh, the blue hair.
Blue hair.
Sweet Tarts. He's working on that diabetes. 7PX. That's new. What is that wheel, Judd? What are you doing?
That's an aluminum wheel with a rubber. I don't even think that's his. So I think. Oh yeah, no, he's got one now. That's his. Him and a couple other people have the aluminum wheel with the rubber tire replacing the foam setup.
I'm not a fan of that. Give me the Azada wheel, give me the Scale Reflex wheel. As long as it's one of the Scale Reflex wheels that like has like all the knurling on it, because their new ones are kind of like wacky. I don't like them.
I want an Asada wheel, but only if it's the 6-spoke T37 looking one.
Is it the bronze, the black, or the silver?
I'll take the bronze always.
Right? Like it's kind of one
choice.
Of okay. So that's what we got for Roast My Rig. We do have a few other chats that came in terms of like just general topics. Like here, Ron, any tips or drills on how to perform a 3+ car tandem? Practice.
Yep.
I mean,
or you can be like Team D style, the Portland chapter, and just kind of choose all the members and then
randomly get together and say, "Hey, do you have a partner yet?"
That's pretty much how that worked out, to be honest.
Although James, you've actually been like in legit team tandems, right? Like down at GGT. Yes. How did that actually work for you, or like the overall competition?
As in, like, it kind of played very similar to how we did ours, you could say. But like I think the biggest team competition or team tandem one I've done was at Sheldon's Hobbies in San Jose. Miko and I drove up from Southern California to the Bay Area to go do this tandem comp, and it's probably twice the amount of drivers that we had the night for PDX. But you'd run 2 laps. One was like a practice lap, and the second one was like your true judge lap, and then it went into like a regular bracketing system, like 1v1 style, and that was just a twin tandem instead of like a triple tandem. But yeah, just as heated and just as crazy as in normal comp. It's just super fun though too. So
right on.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, so we're close.
Yeah, you're very close.
Honestly, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was actually blown away with how close everything is up. Like I thought, there's probably gonna be a lot of changes and some different, protocol for how things are done up here compared to down there. And I've been blown away every time. I'm like, wow, organization is the same, if not better, up here. The crew mentality and the people who drive, it's really funny how similar the crew mentality is.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, oh, cool. It's like I'm back with another family that is not is very removed from where I came from. But man, it's almost like the same vibe, same great, amazing crew, and it almost feels like more or less of the same in a good way. So,
that actually makes me feel a lot at ease, to be honest, because like every single time we run a competition or every single time we're just like we meet new people from out of area, right? It's like, how do we compare? How do we like, are we the outliers, or are we just doing our own thing, or do we actually still fit into the actual crowd? So that makes me feel better.
Now, you guys, I was actually first night I went to PDX, I was blown away with the driver just experience and just the talent that was there. Because sometimes you visit tracks and you don't know what everyone's ability is. You're like, am I going to be able to even tandem with some of these people? Do they really, or do they? Yeah, you don't know what's going on, and I thought it was very comparable to my home track, which was really cool. It's like, wow, I can go into the mix, go drive with people, and it's going to be a great time, and not just a full car wreck scene out on the track. And the vibes are great. So I think you guys are absolutely killing it.
That just means that you waited long enough before you actually came.
Okay.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. Like, so as far as like our drivers, I mean, a lot of people progressed pretty fast.
But 100.
And then, we have our core, our other core group that was there too. And like Nick and Marcus with Elliot, basically some of the guys that are local to this area, other than Midnight Suns, we all kind of have driven before. It's the same guys. If we started drifting with you a long time ago, some of us are still drifting together. But since you brought that up, my question is, like, every time you go out to the track, do you ever feel like there's always just people waiting to follow you? Like, they don't even try to lead. Like, do you feel that sometimes?
On occasion, for sure. Like, I'll be just driving or doing a few laps, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, look at that. I got like 6 people all piled up behind me wanting to do a train. And I always feel honored when people want to, tandem behind me, because it makes me feel like I'm actually running clean laps. But it doesn't bother me. I think it's fun. If anything, it teaches them how to chase even better. So I'm all for it.
And that's actually that's a really important thing to talk about, actually. Like, being in the lead of a train means that you're driving clean laps. Like, because if you don't have a train, or if you have a 7-car train, like, there's only one way to achieve that: one, practice, and like nothing but a clean lap every single time. You just can't beat it. That's why Nick always gets called out or like drives in front.
So for
Oh.
D style, Miko always pushed me in the front because he knew for a while, like when I first came on, I was not very comfortable with leading. I really was more of a chaser, and because Miko could throw down any of the cleanest laps at the track, and I'm like, it was great to follow him because of that. And then once I started getting put in the spotlight of having to drive really clean laps, it kind of like forced me to be just cleaner with my throttle and steer, just trying to keep it as smooth as possible. And it's, definitely stressful. I don't think anyone most of the time wants to lead because, just you get everyone on you and you have to perform, but it's something you kind of work into and you get more comfortable with. And now I definitely don't mind. I enjoy when people drop behind me.
I mean, even in competition, right? Lead and follow laps can change so much. Like,
oh yeah.
like John, you were saying the other week how like just your follow is stronger than your lead, right?
Depending on which car, wow, I can say that now. It's and depending on who's following me, I would say that too. Because if my guy that's chasing me can't chase or is bumping into me all the time, it doesn't make it a fun time to lead, or your transitions can't be where you want it to be. So you trying to set up your transition so they can follow doesn't always work. But I prefer. I don't really know if I prefer chasing. It's cool if I'm chasing somebody that knows how to drive or that's putting down good lines or making it so it's challenging me to chase them. If you're too slow and I'm just behind you all the time, yeah, okay, cool. We can do laps, like it's fun. But like if to me it's the challenge of like, can I keep up and can I keep up not hitting that person, or can I follow his angles? That's a challenge for me. When I'm leading, it's more of a challenge of like, can I do the clean laps so he can follow me all the time? Sometimes it does get annoying when people just don't drive, and then all of a sudden when you're just trying to chill and drive, kind of do your own lines, boom, they're right there. That can get annoying. Or if they follow you too close and they don't give you enough room to transition, or it just hits you.
That right there, that's what it's all about. Being able, like, doors are cool. Being able to let the lead car transition so that you can transition is way better.
Yeah, that was something that was voiced a lot at GGT because there's two teams. You could almost say like D style is like kind of like team A, if you will, or like kind of like the home court. And then for a lot of the other incredible talent and drivers that were there was also the Swift Sons. And that was like, if you're a great driver and Keith liked you and thought you were a good driver, he'd kind of put you on the Swift Sons. But with all this kind of like teaching and coaching for getting into these groups, it's like a lot of it was trying to teach the chase, like, hey, don't follow so you got to learn to give the lead some room to transition, because if you're right there, it's going to be some pretty dirty laps and lead to some upset situations. So it was never meaner. Is we did get we were vocal with other drivers like, hey, you need to back off, and I don't know if it's harsh, but it worked out great of just kind of teaching everyone of like, hey, this is how it works, and now that you know, let's move forward with it.
Yep.
Now there's definitely been times especially with everybody being newer at PDX, there was times where it's like, hey, this is how you follow, or this is how you lead, or hit all the clipping points so everybody can follow you. Or even the new guys, like the new guys that are still trying to figure out their cars now that they're getting better at driving. Of course, everybody wants to get doors, and there's always time and place for that. So I don't know. I think we'll get there to where everybody's on the same page, right? To where we're all like, oh yeah, everybody can do a train of like 12 cars. I think we did that the first night you were there. There's like 8 cars behind you.
Yeah,
And there's like
that sounds already
9,
familiar.
Then there was like 9, like I think we had 15 cars at one time trying to tandem. That was hectic because of course you're getting to the point where people are crashing, or you're getting up to the line and then you're leading and you're like, oh crap, there's like 10 cars behind me.
Yeah.
But it's always fun. I think that's part of the the reason why we go to a track instead of like driving alone in our garage. It's the camaraderie, the oh damn, we did like 15 cars, or the videos that comes out at the end of the night. So yeah,
Right.
we'll see what happens here in the next few months.
My favorite spots in the train is first, second, or last.
I say last is one of the hardest ones, just because either you can get put into a wall so easily and you have to kind of reconnect the line, or you're like the caboose. You got to like wrap up the the end of the line. So hats off for liking the back of the line.
But then again, that comes down to like for our team tandem, right? We kept it mellow, like we kept it close, mellow, basic. Like I didn't think we did anything special, like switch places or anything like that, but it worked for us. I think it comes down to like if your lead car knows where to put his car, to where it's like, okay, I got people behind me. If he goes wide, then everybody could go wide. If he goes too narrow at a corner, or back he's a corner without telling everybody, or he kind of makes it like, okay, that's not gonna work, obviously. But like when you led our group, it was cool because we can follow your line. It was easy to do, and then that's pretty much how everybody's kind of driving now. When a group gets started, that front car, it doesn't matter who it is for the most part. But yeah, it's now okay. Go wide, do the homie line if you want a train going, and then everybody works together, not just full speed every corner.
Yeah, 100%. Like train line is very different than like competition line. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Fully agree. Yeah, when you're at the front of the pack with those trains, you have to create enough room. Like I transition faster, or like sometimes I'm a little lazy on, oh, I'm coming through this hairpin, I got to flick into this one. Like on a train, I'll try and do it as kind of soon and run it as deep as I can, just to make sure everyone else can make it through. Because it only takes one car to just transition late, and all of a sudden it throws off the whole cadence of the run.
So since we're talking about team tandems, Ron just posted a question. Is it common to communicate on a team train? And yes, it was kind of cool actually, because the fun comp at PDX was our first team tandem that anyone saw in Oregon, right?
Yep.
Like I saw Jake talking with Neil and Lance and Alex talking about like what they're gonna do. I saw you guys just talking like how you're gonna approach each corner. And so yeah, like a lot of open communication. Open communication is better. It's kind of like if you're playing an FPS game and you're trying to flank someone coming around the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Communication.
The cool thing about it is like people actually working together. Like people that don't normally drive together ended up being in the same team. James and I and Debrino. I mean, it was literally like, you don't have a partner, let's go. Like, let's do this. And then of course, there's Team Lambo. I don't think those guys ever drove together, and they did pretty well. Then you have what is it like?
The only guys that have driven together, like actually driven together, were the Midnight Sun guys. So Jake, Lance, Alex, and Neil. Those were the only guys.
And then, I mean, other than the track driving, like actually like being on the track, just open track and following each other. I think that's how Debrino, James, and I kind of know each other's style, was from that. And then like Mike and his group, I mean, they've seen each other on the track, but nothing like formal to where it's like, okay, we're gonna practice. This is your lead, your follow, your last. And then Charlie's team, they actually like practice together a little bit.
What was their name? Like something Mooners?
It's Afternoon Moon or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Judd, what was it? You're on that team.
Who? Oh, Judd?
Yeah.
What's cool about that team, like
they're all
I like
new.
how
they're all new.
Yeah. Yep, they're all new. Like those guys are literally into drifting maybe 2, 3 months, maybe 2 months before the comp.
Wow.
And then like Judd has tried drifting before. Charlie was new into it. Like he literally showed up at PDX and tried the rental car, and then fell in love with it. Austin was from rock crawling and bashing. Damien is from real car drifting, some real car drifting, um, some RC bashing. So
Hey, James, how
Mhm.
so when you see a new person come into the world of drift, how many people
Good-
have
good
you
topic.
seen how many people have you seen literally fall off the deep end and just go full balls to the walls, like absolutely buy everything, like top tier stuff?
Oh, quite a few.
Yeah.
Probably half a dozen or more.
Like I think it's absolutely funny in this hobby because literally I've seen it happen so many times in terms of like new guys that are at PDX right now. It's not just like, oh, I'm good with an RMX. It's like, oh, this is what a real chassis is supposed to feel like. 1 month later, they have like a 10PX or a 7PX, and like Judd went from just having what a basic YD2
17.
M17 with a YD2S, right? Something like that. All the way to a Shark final form with a 7PXR. So like it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I
If you're
think that,
really into it.
right, like that's how our hobby is. It's either you're building a body to make it look really good and matching the wheels, or you're building a new chassis.
Hmm.
Like I think I've built more chassis this past few months over last year.
Hmm.
I think. Yeah. No, we did the same thing with the mini and stuff, but I think I'm more active this year for some reason.
I mean, you had real car last year.
Yeah, that's true. I did real car stuff last year and this year.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. I'm on the page. I'm on the Super G page. So product watches. This is what we're gonna do. You can now buy a Aki Vance Agile. Wow, it's right in front of my face. But it comes with a level 42 rotor, and it's a 13.5. So, this is the new kick. James, do you run a 10.5 or a 13.5?
I run a 10.5.
Have you tried the 13.5 or the 15.5 bandwagon yet?
I have driven a couple 13.5s, and it's more of just getting used to where the power is. I'm used to the 10.5 with a little bit more torquey versus the 13, but set upright, 13s can feel absolutely amazing. I think most of the crew now at GGT actually switched the 13 because the 10.5 was just too fast for that area, and they're having just a way better rate with the 13 for just keeping things consistent. So I definitely get it. I haven't hopped off the 10.5 wagon yet.
Right. I mean, to each their own, right? Like, honestly, 10.5 is kind of my milk and butter. But at the same time, I'm loving my 15.5 with a torque rotor. It's different, that's for sure, but it's kind of like a more laid back driving style instead of like all like throwing everything everywhere. You have to think about it a little bit more. Sam in chat, is 13.5 more torque or 10.5? Wait, 13.5 more torque, 10.5 more speed? I mean, yes, it is. Like the lower the turn, or the higher the turn motor, the more torque that you get inherently. So it's always a trade-off. Lower turn, more RPMs, but less torque. So if you're going to combat like with a 10.5 against 13.5, then you can like pinion down, and then you're going to get more RPMs, which also results in more torque, right? So it kind of just depends on what you want. Which Cameron was doing rotor tuning last night, I think, and he has a Hobbywing D10 10.5, and he swapped in the medium strength rotor and then swapped over to the heavy strength, like their top magnetism rotor, and he didn't like it. So he popped in the medium magnet, which is the stock rotor that comes in the 13.5. I wish Hobbywing would have just done that from the very, very get-go instead of like having the D10 with their super no guts, no glory rotor. Anyway, um, have you done any rotor tuning, James?
I have not. I have not played around with that. But funny you talk about with Cameron's car. I actually did drive. He passed the remote to me when he did put in the bigger rotor into it. And after I remember driving his car during the comp at the car show, and then driving it last night, and it is incredibly like I see why he went back. It drove so smooth back then. The power delivery almost felt better, so I see why he went back. But no, I haven't dived into any of that yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, so okay, you drove his car on comp day.
Yeah.
Okay, so you also got to experience something different then, because he also recently just got a 10px. So
Oh yes,
so
yeah.
what else did that change?
All right, I'll be back, guys.
No,
No, you can't
no,
leave.
no, you can't. No, Mitch has a 15.5. When did Mitch get a 15.5? I don't know. I know. Who knows? For our tracks that we have, I'd still recommend a 10.5. Like, there's no problem with it. It's a little bit more touchy, right? In terms of I drive right at the very beginning of my RPM or my trigger pull, right? Whereas 13.5 is going to give you a little bit more resolution. Oh, my car. He drove my car with a 15.5. But 13.5 or anything going up is just going to give you a little bit more resolution in terms of your trigger pull. So if you don't like the very beginning hanging out there, like the very first 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters of your throttle pull, then that's where a 13.5 or a 17.5 is, or even 21.5 is going to play out better for you.
No, that totally makes sense. Because I think when I drive on different surfaces or different places, for tuning, one of my biggest things is going through my throttle curve and also kind of like the forward bite of where it engages, and I have that set, and it's anywhere between like 0 to +8 for like forward, your like forward trim. I don't know if it's and then since we're driving the 10.5s and they have like that very thin or small threshold of like where you want your throttle.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have my curve like at -10 just to help give a little bit, so it's not so punchy right off the gate, give it a little bit more resolution.
Now, have you tried that tuning that in the ESC instead of the radio, as far as like how punchy the soft, like the start is? Because
not really.
Okay. Because like I'm more of the opinion that like a linear line on your radio is best because you know what's coming, right? But like there are times where tuning the throttle control, which actually on 7px and 10px now, we can go in and kind of add and subtract at different points in our throttle range. So that's kind of cool.
That's super cool.
It's kind of like boost by gear kind of in real cars. I was playing with that a little bit. I didn't get too far into it, but it is kind of cool at how we can actually go into that on the radio and get that taken care of.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I was gonna say, funny enough, I actually use it quite a bit with comps based off my my nerves. If I'm like super jittery or really nervous, I'll actually dial down like my acceleration and forward, just so I'm not as trigger happy or accidentally do something silly, like to help try and bring down the car. And then once I'm feeling it, I'll actually readjust it or stuff like that. So interesting input to how I deal with trying to comp.
No, 100%. Like the way that I tune my cars is always going to be on like the aggressive attack, like so I can just be there. But yeah, tuning for a comp is a little bit different because it's like you want to have the ability to like make the mistake and not actually have it affect you too much or too bad. Like when I was driving some of the RCFC guys, they were literally back just from the Super G like championships, right? So we were driving their setups, and this was 2 years ago, I think, John. Matt Timmer and Groggy's setups.
Oh yeah, at the expo.
At the expo. Yeah, they felt very, very kind of tame in terms of just like being able to drive, but they'd still do what you need them to. So, yeah. Okay, moving on. RDX stuff. And I don't know how I feel about this. Not just the red springs, but their new set of springs. Because now they have the Gen 1 linear springs, the Gen 1 PC springs, the Gen 2 PC springs, and now they have these springs. I think they're actually calling them the R-Tune springs, which technically R-Tunes already existed, like from MC1 times. Or I mean,
it's we have the blue one, the thinner blue one, and then a thicker blue one.
You're right. So it would be the thicker one, which would be the R-Tune.
Yep.
These are coming in at 23 millimeters short. So the stock ones were 26, I believe. So even more short. I don't know how I feel.
I want to test them out. Let's see. So my problem with springs right now, RDX happened. Honestly, it's like the standard. If it doesn't feel like the RDX, it's like, oh well, I need different springs. I am getting a similar or a better, I think, tuning technique on because I'm running completely on the fun car. I'm running a completely box stock, like a YD2SS or YD2Z springs and shocks right now.
Mm-hmm.
With the drilled out pistons, and it's been working great for me on that fun car. But I would like to tune a little bit better, maybe. But I don't know if I want to use like big bore shocks again. Like I think big bores is on the Mini, and that's it. But I don't know. Well, we'll see, because now we have other things that we try to make it better.
Well, the RDX is technically big bore, isn't it?
I
mean, they're plastic.
Plastic shocks, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like now that we know that there's little tricks that we can do, like drilling out your pistons and things like that, makes things a little. Oh, and switching out your bladder and your O-rings.
John, you were the only one that was like hesitant to drill out pistons.
I mean, I'm trying to be pure.
Wow. Anyway.
Well, if you guys remember back in the D-like days, and there we are, like I will not change anything. Period. And then things happened.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I mean things happened.
So, well, things evolved.
Okay. Other things that Rev D is coming down the pipeline. So I'm not sure. Does the bell crank already, like the aluminum Rev D bell crank, already fit on the RDX?
I think Miko's tried running it, but I'm not sure on that. So don't like quote me, because I kind of saw pictures. The bell crank is different, I think.
Anyway, so they're coming out with a graphite, basically a stiffer plastic version of the steering rack, which should make it even more snappier, or just a little bit more put together, I feel. Which I don't know how that would translate into the RDX steering, because it's already like fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna fix the slop.
So like their SE design or the SES design, where the aluminum, it has a chamfered edge.
Yeah.
The beveled edge.
Yeah.
This will, like their words, this will make the steering a little bit more precise.
Mm-hmm.
I think is what they're going for, is a little bit more precision versus like how sometimes it's a little sloppy at some sections.
I mean, I don't think it's going to take out the slop is the thing, because like usually where slop comes from is the ball ends. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Ooh,
You've
James.
actually looked at this more than I have, James.
Okay, are you a
Oh,
fan?
I think James had some insight on this.
Well,
James, what do you know?
Well, on the slider or well, on the bell crank or like
So sorry, I was about to
Yeah,
ask
wait.
James a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I was all
Sorry.
ready for Adam.
Right. Are you a fan, or how often are you replacing your ball ends on your car?
Oh god, I'm really bad at like I'll get it to the ball where the ball has too much swap and I'll realize too late and then replace it. So not soon enough. You could say.
I mean, I'm still guilty for whatever has my SX3 ball ends. It's still the same ball ends. So however old that is now.
I have not replaced ball ends.
Yeah.
So,
The only time that I'm replacing ball ends is when it's like switching out to a new part and it came with it. Like the Shark front end, since it came with you need longer links in the front to get your direct steering working. That's when I changed them. Lance, ball ends are forever. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to know what people's maintenance schedules are, like in terms of building shocks, changing diffs, or rebuilding diffs, all that fun stuff. And I realized that I'm doing it like a lot more just because I'm changing my setups a lot more.
so you know how I blew out the shock on the Mini at PDX?
Yeah.
I have not replaced the oil that's in it, or like I haven't rebuilt that shock yet. But then again, I also stopped driving the Mini to build a big car.
Right.
So, yep.
Okay. Let's see. What do we want to talk about? We've kind of done all the product watch stuff. Let's go this way.
Charger fan.
Huh?
Oh, James is scrambling for chargers over there.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's like he never knew it was gonna last that long. Now you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
It wasn't the K
Shoot.
body. It blew out. I think what body was I running on that when it blew out? Oh,
It
I
was
was
a
running.
Miata.
No, I was running the SMX. I think, or no, it's still the Miata because I didn't switch to SMX until after.
You're talking about a
Yeah.
recent blowout?
No, I haven't driven that thing in like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Well,
But yeah.
the blowout that I'm thinking of happened like a year and a half to 2 years ago.
Oh no, not that one. That one got fixed, but yeah. No, this is within like 2 months ish, 3 months.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
I still ran it without fixing it, even with the K body.
I mean, hey, some people just don't run any oil in their shocks to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a very, very real thing.
Yeah, there's a guy at Super G named Carlo, and he was like, that was his thing. Like, wait, what weight are you running in your shocks? Like, I'm not running any oil. It's just lubricated, and that's it. And he absolutely crushed it, and he would drive really well. And I'm like, I don't understand.
So when I tried it, the whole dynamic of the car would just like lash out whenever it was like it wasn't settled because it was bouncing all over the place. So I'm like, okay, let's go back. We need
All right,
something
speaking
else.
of lubricated shocks, right? So this guy, they have the clear O-rings that sticks. You're supposed to stack 3 of them, and then you're putting the washer and then the clip to hold it together. Well, it's getting stuck. No oil, but I did put some oil on the O-rings, just enough so I could do this. I mean, it works pretty good, but it's not like there's no oil. And it works. It drifts fine. I was able to tandem with people with it.
Oh, hey, James, on your diff builds, are you doing the 4 spider gears, or are you taking 2 of them out?
I'm doing the 4 spider gears.
Okay. Because like if you watch RCDC videos, like it's literally 2 gears, like take the O-rings out of the outdrives and then just run it basically completely open, a little bit of lubrication, but that's it.
Interesting.
Mhm.
I mean,
Let's
I
try
did
it.
that. Yeah, I did that on accident with my first YD2. I built it and I'm like, cool, here's the diff, throw it in, and I never put oil in it until like Miko's like, what oil are you running in your diff? I'm like, I don't know. Did the factory put oil in there? And found out I was pretty much running an open diff, and I was like, oh, that's what that feels like then.
Right. Oh, have you tried rebuilding the diff with the black O-rings? Or have
No, is that a secret?
well, I mean, the whole 2 gear thing was also supposedly a secret, right? But
Yeah.
but no, so from my feeling of the Yokomo diff is that it's like whatever oil that you put in it, you never ever feel a difference because of the O-ring compression. There's a black O-ring that you can buy that actually you put in 5K and you'll actually feel a difference. Because like in the car, it probably makes a difference, but like when you're just spinning it, when you're just feeling it in your hands, they all feel the same to me. So that's why I would never did like a lot of tuning. Not to mention that my gear diffs would always blow up in my transmission, so I just moved to a ball diff.
And
You
then
got it.
you went to CLSD.
And then I went to CLSD, which runs grease, so it still slings a little bit, but for the most part, it's pretty clean. Okay. Anything you want to talk about, John?
Are we moving on from
Okay, so
topic questions? Or?
so we're in topics and questions. What do you guys want to hear about more? Do you want to hear about competition trends and what we're seeing for the Super G, well, our Super G series, or do you want to hear about a few tips and tricks or like questions that we've had or that I've seen throughout the week? I had a Futaba GYD question come up earlier today. And actually that's that. And then in Discord, Aza suggested the hot boy topic of active toe. Actually, let's talk about that. Active toe. John, you don't have a chassis that's active toe, right?
Nope.
James, you have a chassis that's active toe?
No, do not.
Okay, that should actually tell you how important active toe is. I have it on my Mini, on my MC1 Mini. Is it cool? Yes. I feel like as long as you know how to tune it and actually work with it, then it can be an advantage. But it is also one more thing that you have to tune. Which is why we actually started talking about tuning setup stations last week. So, it's more complicated than what it should, I feel. That's all I feel about it. Brian Fellers, I want to get a new chassis. How do you guys feel about the GOM?
It's cool, but it's too expensive for me. I did get to drive a few of your guys' car. The problem is like the RDX happened, right? Like we just have a chassis that does what it's supposed to do without a lot of changes. Like the changes that I made with my RDX, it's like I wanted to try it because Miko was trying it or doing it. The CLSD, I wanted to try it on a car that I was actually driving at that moment. But if I didn't try it, I don't know, I probably would have never changed it. With the the GOM's not bad. Adam had a good driving one. A couple of the one or two of the Midnight Suns guy had a good running one with
just Alex.
GoPro Pro stuff. Kenny had one that was driving decent. I don't know. It was just never like, I have to get a GOM. The Overdose logo was cool. Oh, I know what turned me off. The chassis. It wasn't the shape that I want it to be.
No, the actual one.
What about you, James? Have you driven a GOM?
I have. There's actually quite a few drivers at Super G that live and die by the GOM. And I've driven them. They are absolutely the ones they're just how they're tuned. They're like butter. They drive so smooth. But it's also every time I see one or people driving it, it's like, oh, you went full baller on this chassis because it's almost like it's like the status symbol for drift in my mind.
Yep.
It's like
100%.
yeah.
So I have a Yogi. It's not a Galm, it's a Yogi. Basically what it is it's a Shark front end with a Galm transmission, belt drive transmission in the rear. Drives great. When I had my Galm, honestly, the more stock that it was, the better it was. So it's not like go out and Frankenstein the Galm as much as you can, because that's what I did to begin with. But it's definitely an easy car to drive, even though that, like, when you look at it, it has nowhere close to the amount of steering that, like, say a Shark or a YD2 or the RDX has, right? But it has the right setup for what it has on the front end, even though that it's like a 10-year-old car. It's fine. Would I recommend it? Yeah, like if you want a new project to go to, but know that you're buying into like a $420 car that's mainly plastic, and then like every single upgrade that you think that you're going to do is literally $200, like every single time.
There's that too, that aspect of it. All the upgrades
Yeah.
for it and all the conversion kit it seems like it's more expensive and more limited than what you can do with like the MC1, the YD2. Yeah, it seems like the YD2 has a lot of options that's affordable, or kind of affordable. Some of them are getting more expensive. But the Galm's like steering rack is like $250, or
I mean,
you know,
okay.
transmission or a carbon chassis.
But in retrospect, right? Okay, the Galm aluminum slide rack is $190. Okay. Now keep in mind that it is literally just the slide rack. It's not like a bulkhead, or it doesn't attach to a bulkhead or anything. It's just the slide rack that attaches to the chassis. But at the same time, if you take the Rev D bell crank, right, depending on which one it is, it's $180 just for the bell crank. And then you have to get is it the ASL knuckles? I think it is.
The SG,
The SG
knuckles.
knuckles, which
Yeah,
is
sure.
another $60, right? So we're at $240
I mean,
right there.
yeah, I guess if you put it that way, it's just with what happened recently with a lot of the chassis is like YD2 definitely has a lot more following, a lot more aftermarket support. So since the market is a little bit more saturated, the prices are not as high. You know, when the RDX came out, or not the RDX, sorry, the MC1, it was like you can only get your hands on it if you're one of the few guys that saw it and ordered it, and then you had to wait for your turn to get one. Same with the whole slide or steering rack belt crank from Rev D. It was like, here's a few hundred, and then you gotta wait for the next batch. Same thing that's happening with the RDX. I think that's why the prices stayed so high, or to where they're at, is because it was not as readily available as a YD2 everything. To where some guys parting one out, or some guys develop like a different, like what's the other company that did a slide rack that's similar to what the Yokomo one is? Yeah, Racing. They have their own slide rack, which is similar pricing as the slide rack from Yokomo.
It's
$20 cheap.
A lot cheaper, actually. So
Is it $90 or something like that?
The original Racing slide rack, I think, was like $80, whereas the only way at the time for the YD2 slide rack was to get the full bulkhead with the aluminum slide rack, which was $150. So like, there's that aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it goes into the brand itself too. Like if you go on the Rev D website and look at their employee list of like who they have, it is such a tiny team of it's actually really impressive for the stuff they put out for how tiny they are.
Mhm.
And if you compare that to like the Yokomo team, it's like, with resources and time, it's like, okay, the Rev D stuff is very boutique-y and very niche. So they kind of have to, for the amount of units that they produce, they have to charge these prices to even get by. Meanwhile, Yokomo's so much larger in comparison that they can kind of, really eat the cost on getting parts out there because they know they got the audience for it. And I think that's what kind of comes down to as well.
But the price difference isn't even that big. Like RTX is 280, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
like RD 1.0 is gonna be around like 250, 260. And then if you get the one with the gyro, then you're like at 304 or something like that. Like the price is great, I think. Like for the RDX, it's an unbeatable price even.
Mhm. Well, I mean, yeah, like I'm not saying that the RDX is expensive, but it's keeping its price to where it's at. Because I mean, how many revisions or variants of YD2 have we had?
Oh,
Exactly.
Super G did an article on that, and it's absolutely insane because it's not just like 5, it's like 20. Like
Mhm.
yeah,
It's a list.
because
Mhm.
what, like if we just name them off, like the ones that we know of, right? There's the YD2 Plus, is what they came out with originally, and then they
Mhm.
came out with the YD2S, and then the all the variants.
SX2.
Yeah, all the
Mhm.
SX variants, and then
Yeah.
all of the like rear motor, and then all the RX, ZX. It's
Mhm.
crazy at how many different YD2s there are. Um,
Mhm.
which actually kind of brings me into another topic for like just what the trends are for like competition. Because uh, were you at Super G competition or championships like 2 years ago, James?
It was, yeah.
Okay. Did you also notice that literally everyone had like a Razer like converted YD2?
Yeah, I know who spawned that and why why that following exists.
But it's like every single YD2 there was always like a Razer conversion or just some conversion. It was never just like a YD2 anymore.
No, yeah, it's exactly.
Okay.
Well, part of that I think is we didn't really have anything going on like as far as chassis goes back then. Like up until the MC1, there was nothing newer
Uh,
than like a YD2 conversion.
More or the less of like it was the bandwagon, like because then you had like uh Yusakani, right? Yusakani
Mhm.
released their PDS mix, and then very, very shortly after, Yokomo came out with their Z chassis. Like it,
True.
so based off of like the different chassis that we're seeing now as far as competition, our competition at the Fitted Car Show, there were 3 racing D5s, MR, not the rear motor anymore, just MR, so the mid rear. There is 1 Oniseki Hanya, 2 Rev D MC1s, 3 RDXs, 4 Sharks, one of which was a Razer conversion Megalodon, 2 were regular, and 1 was a Final Form Shark. 2 NGEs, and then 5 variants of a YD2.
Nice.
So it's just an interesting spread.
Yeah, that's actually some pretty good diversity going on within those chassis. I'm impressed.
And even more so the tuning aspect of it, just from the weights alone, is really, really interesting. Let me get that in front of me here. Because essentially, like, if you're a shark, then you're literally heavy. Like, Lance's Megalodon was the only one that came close to an RDX. Most of the RDXs were around like 1350 to 1390, like around there in terms of all up weight. But yeah, like if you had a shark, you're looking at like 1450 or more into the 1500s, almost guaranteed. And my shark is like 1550, so heavy car, but they work. I like mine. yeah, just really interesting numbers. Like I remember when the NGE and the like Yusukani mix and L, like all of those came out. It was just like a super light car, and yet now it's just like um, a tuning style. Like, is it your style or not? I do think that RDX fits into the light style. Lance, I
Well,
put my
so
shark
you
on
know,
the slim fast diet.
right? But do you think that the reason why the competition chassis wise, the reason why it was so diverse is because we've, as far as Northwest goes, we've developed a certain tuning that works for everybody. The way it's not, we're not just at that level where like, okay, you have to drive a shark to like to be competitive. I think we're at that level where it's like we can make any chassis competitive with the knowledge that we all put out there.
Right.
Is that because between your tuning, my tuning, and then I'm sure with when people James when people approach James, like Kenny approaching him about things, it's like they're. I think we're evolving to where everybody learns a lot faster, and towards like, oh, I can make my car drives as good as yours with some mods or very minimal mods regarding like camber and caster and toe ends. It's mainly like now we're electronics. You got to get good electronics or decent electronics. It doesn't have to be necessarily drift related, but decent electronics.
Mhm.
And I think that's why we're seeing more types of chassis being competitive or trying to compete out there.
100%.
Which is cool. I like that because then now we can have more play cars, right? Oh, I want to know how that drives, and then oh, it drives just like my car.
That's actually why I'm so bored right now. Because there's like, so I haven't had an RDX yet, but everyone has one, so I'll just drive theirs.
But you drove the RDX before I even bought it.
I know.
And everybody, that RDX got passed around to so many people
Well, that's because
before I even
so
owned it.
the funny thing is that RDX was supposed to be a raffle, like for our
Mhm.
series. So John, you took away the raffle for our series. Thanks.
Yep, you guys are welcome.
I mean, hopefully they'll have another run in pretty soon because technically, well, actually, no, we decided not to do a chassis, right? We're doing something else for prizes. So
I think so.
yeah.
Yep. Um. So yeah,
Cameron, well, not just tuning either. Electronics at the jump that really makes the difference. Yeah. Actually, which brings me to one of Az's topics that he wanted to talk about. RTRs, and we'll finish up with this last one. And then touch base on his other questions. But RTRs is the weak sauce of is the weak sauce electronics in RTRs hurting the drift community and discouraging new drifters who find they need to pretty much replace everything if they want to do more than slide around on the driveway? No.
no, I don't think that, James.
Yeah. When I first started, when I got my Y2S driving at Super G, I knew quite a few fellow drivers who were driving the box stock RMX, and they were able to at least learn how to get laps in. And I mean, sure, they might have to do electronics down the line, but it wasn't so. It never inhibited them from enjoying the sport or getting into the hobby. Like it totally got them sold on it. So I don't see it as something extremely discouraging or not.
Mm-hmm. And like the people that seem like they're in a race to like just replace everything, I think it's out of the fashion that they see everybody else at the track. And literally, if you look at honestly the majority of the percentage of drivers either at PDX or at Northwest is either going to have a 7PX or a 10PX or some ridiculously high-end radio. The minority is the nobles and the cheaper, like, not to say that they're cheap, but like that's just how we've become over in our like little niche world, is that's what we've been, that's where we're at right now. And it's just that we've been there long enough that we evolved to want to need that stuff. And And yeah, Jesse in chat, I can only do what I can afford. Exactly. Right? Like there was a point in time where one of the things or one of the ideals is like literally buy what you can, but that shouldn't detract you from like ever being a part of something, right?
Mhm.
Like in the camera world for me, it's like don't be so obsessed with like a full frame lens or a full frame body or sensor, and because I don't want to spend $2,500 just on a camera body. Like my camera body that I use to take all your pictures is only a $1,000 body. And then the glass is the other expensive part. But it like you buy what you can, right? You make do with what you can.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah,
shouldn't be
it's
ashamed. You should never be ashamed of that. Just run what you have. Yes, MST does have high failure rates. Their servos are going to go first. And I've seen 2 MSTs out of box that are just dead. So,
and I would say the radio on those MST RTR definitely have to go. Those are the first thing I would. I think any RTR radio, especially if you can't see what you're actually doing and you have to listen to beeps, is kind of like it's gotta go. Like no one knows how to use those anymore. I mean, I might be able to figure it out with the correct manual, but I don't know. I'm kind of beyond that. Like as far as like what I want to play with and use. I think we're thinking a little bit more advanced now.
I
But
mean,
yeah, the radio has to go.
as far as like the RTR radio from Yokomo, from Red Cat, from MST, they're all the same exact radio, just a different brand name. That's
Different
it.
shapes.
No, they're even the same shape.
Yeah, it's literally the same mold.
Actually, I haven't seen them side by side too. So
Mhm.
I've only seen the MST one, and I was like, bro, you got to get rid of that radio ASAP.
Right. Cameron, one weird statement someone had at PDX for the drift track was getting a timer like the buggy track, and 3 people, I believe, said bad idea. Honestly, what there was a live stream that, or Kevin had a live stream that was going on, and everyone was literally driving an oval. I mean, racers be racers, right? They want to be timed, they want to go fast. And honestly, Lance, bad idea. Yes.
For sure. I think racing for drifting is a bad idea. I don't know. That's how you break parts and destroy bodies. Or
Although I still think that the actual oval class that I was trying to get started with drift cars, that would have been a fun class.
yeah, well, I mean, we did it right. We had what 8 of us or 6 of us doing oval.
Yeah,
like
for funsies.
and it was fun. I think it's part of like drifting would just be like if you're tandeming all day, it gets boring every now and then. So you have to break it up. That's why I ended up with 2 crawlers, and then that escalated to more crawlers. But yeah, it could go back
Okay.
with timing. All right.
So we're at time. So anything that's left here, I'm gonna go ahead and
Yeah.
put into a doc for next week. But I want to finish this out with one last thing, because like qualifying always seems to be like a bad time for everybody, right? I mean, it is one at a time, and it kind of makes sense. We have the option for random brackets, and I'm talking about fun comps here, you guys, not like Super G series or anything like that. What if we did like a musical chair style type of thing? So I put like numbered dots out on the track, and then you just have to randomly pair up. Good idea, bad idea, something different?
It could be a thing. I mean, we did random for the first fun comp. Like it was literally like pull it out of a hat, and then people just put it together. Like the
Mhm.
judges just pick names, and okay, this guy will go with this guy. This guy will go with this guy.
Mhm.
And then whoever wanted that, it's pretty random. I mean, we could do that. We could do like a call out system to where, okay, you and I battle first run.
Mhm.
Like, hey, it could be cool, and it keeps it interesting because you didn't see how the other person would have qualified. They
Mhm.
could have qualified last, and then win the comp.
James, have you ever taped balloons and tacks to your car?
No, that's not. I've seen it and it looks so fun. I never got.
Okay, we're doing that.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
I don't want to be in charge of that. Last time was a pain in the butt because I had to blow up all of those balloons, and Jake cheated by using a balloon that was like slowly deflating. So someone else can be in charge of that. But yeah, okay.
We'll figure some stuff out.
Yeah, so fun things are going to come, and as long as the community helps support it, then it's always going to be a blast no matter what. So be there, be awesome. John, James, you want to say anything to the stream?
John, you want to go first?
James, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I'm bad at that. Okay, sorry.
No worries. Well, thank you guys again for having me tonight. It's really cool to hop on and talk. For anyone out there who is getting into the hobby, we're talking about like electronics and cost. The only reason I have the electronics I do is either a friend of mine either screwed up his and I had to sell my stuff to him and I just moved on from there, or I just straight up outgrew the electronics that I had.
Yep.
So electronics are only half the battle. The other half is putting time in and getting comfortable with driving. So you can be an awesome driver with mid-tier or lower tier electronics. So don't ever feel like you have to have the best to drive well. And I don't know, if anyone's at the track and needs help, feel free to reach out if you have questions to any of us. But I'm always open to help share where I'm at with my car and talk about settings or even add settings if you like how my car drives. So don't be a stranger.
Mm-hmm. John?
Oh, well put. That's actually some really great words from James. Well, James, thanks for taking the time, 2 hours of your night. Thank the wife for letting you do this. Hopefully you don't get in trouble. But yeah, thanks for being here and being a part of our stream on a Saturday night. Thanks for everybody on the chat, everybody that hit that like button. If you haven't, please do so. If you have topics and things you want to talk about, we will add a segment to where we just talk about random things if we don't have anything else to talk about, to make it more fun. Like Adam said, support your guys that are trying to keep the track going at your local area. Those guys put in their own free time to
Make
put
it
up
work.
a track or make a layout. And then the time that they take away from their families to talk about what kind of layout they're going to do, how the comp's going to happen. It all takes time. So support your local tracks, support the guys that's out there helping you every day. Other than that, good stream tonight. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you again.
Bye.
Later, guys.